Chapter 48. And in the 6th year of the 3rd week of the 49th Jubilee, you departed, and dwelt in the land of Midian for 5 weeks and 1 year. And you returned to Egypt in the 2nd week, in the 2nd year, in the 50th Jubilee. And you yourself know what he spoke to you on Mount Sinai, 24:10 a.m., and what Prince Mastema desired to do with you when you were returning to Egypt, on the way when you met him at the lodging place. Did he not with all his power seek to kill you, and deliver the Egyptians out of your hand when he saw that you were sent to execute judgment and vengeance on the Egyptians? And I delivered you out of his hand, and you performed the signs and wonders which you were sent to perform in Egypt against Pharaoh, and against all his house, and against his servants and his people. And the Lord executed a great vengeance on them for Israel's sake, and smote them through the plagues of blood and frogs, lice and dog-flies, and malignant boils breaking forth in blains, and their cattle by death, and the hailstones. Thereby he destroyed everything that grew for them, and by locusts, which devoured the residue which had been left by the hail, and by darkness, and by death of the firstborn of men and animals. And on all their idols the Lord took vengeance, and burned them with fire. And everything was sent through your hand, that you should declare these things before they were done. And you spoke with the king of Egypt before all his servants and before his people, and everything took place according to your words. 10 great and terrible judgments came on the land of Egypt, that you might execute vengeance on it for Israel. And the Lord did everything for Israel's sake, and according to his covenant, which he had ordained with Abraham, that he would take vengeance on them, as they had brought them by force into bondage. And the prince Mastema stood up against you, and sought to cast you into the hands of Pharaoh, and he helped the Egyptian sorcerers. And they stood up and wrought before you the evils which we permitted them to work, but the remedies we did not allow to be wrought by their hands. And the Lord struck them with malignant ulcers, and they were not able to stand, for we destroyed them so that they could not perform a single sign. And notwithstanding all these signs and wonders, the prince Mastema was not put to shame, because he took courage and cried to the Egyptians to pursue after you with all the powers of the Egyptians, with their chariots, and with their horses, and with all the hosts of the peoples of Egypt. And I stood between the Egyptians and Israel, and we delivered Israel out of his hand, and out of the hand of his people. And the Lord brought them through the midst of the sea, as if it were dry land. And all the peoples whom he brought to pursue after Israel, the Lord our God cast them into the midst of the sea, into the depths of the abyss beneath the children of Israel, even as the people of Egypt had cast their children into the river. He took vengeance on 1,000,000 of them, and 1,000 strong and energetic men were destroyed on account of one suckling of the children of your people, which they had thrown into the river. And on the 14th day, and on the 15th, and on the 16th, and on the 17th, and on the 18th, the prince Mastema was bound and imprisoned behind the children of Israel, that he might not accuse them. And on the 19th we let them loose, that they might help the Egyptians, and pursue the children of Israel. And he hardened their hearts, and made them stubborn, and the device was devised by the Lord our God, that he might smite the Egyptians, and cast them into the sea. And on the 14th we bound him, that he might not accuse the children of Israel on the day when they asked the Egyptians for vessels and garments, vessels of silver, and vessels of gold, and vessels of bronze, in order to despoil the Egyptians in return for the bondage in which they had forced them to serve. And we did not lead forth the children of Israel from Egypt empty-handed.